The work is called Genius Loci, which means the genius of the place, and it comes from an Alexander Pope poem from the 18th century about landscape. People, when they come to Berrington, think that this 18th century landscape is actually natural, not artificially created. So part of our remit was to draw attention to the fact that it's a designed landscape.
There was an interesting parallel between Capability Brown standing on this, what must have been a very agricultural landscape, and imagining what could be, and the parallel between his process and, albeit on a very different scale, our process. And so we played on that a bit with the idea that we'd start off with the house and with the installation in the house.
With our first piece called Calling in the Country, it consists of a desk in the oval room based on Brown's desk. And when the visitor walks into the room, they open the desk, it triggers a soundscape. The soundscape is the artist's journey recorded around Berrington in early spring, and inside the desk is a map, and the map is of the landscape and details all the installations. So the visitor, in a sense, is coming inside the house and already being taken outside. When the visitor comes out of the house, they'll find in front of the house a plane table, and these plane tables are based on 18th century surveyors' tables. They're dotted around the landscape, and they are places for the visitor to stop to look at the views that Brown intended. You see these ridges that Brown put in, and they were built up with spoil from the lake. And along these lines we've built an installation called the Intending Lines, made out of greenwood, ash and hazel coppiced from the Berrington woodland.
A lot of the work is about talking to visitors as much as actually making the work. And that was a very important part of the project. And again, what's great about that was that we're here, very present in the landscape.
For the first time ever, we're seeing droves of people going out wanting to experience it, wanting to look at installations, and the feedback we're getting from visitors has been overwhelmingly positive.
And at the same time, we worked in George's plantation, so there's an oval space in there that sort of parallels the oval room and also the columns in the house.
Our final installation that was called Telling the Waters, again from the Pope poem, and we constructed that from 18 frames of woven greenwood designed to reflect the movement and the undulation of the water. Brown dug out the lake to make it seem as if it was coming from a winding river, so we wanted to trace the movement of that serpentine curve that Brown was so keen on.
So the workers obviously moved tons and tons of earth from down that end of the field, as it were, up to build these ridges. I mean, 30 years it took, and so it really became a sort of a real eulogy to the workers in the landscape.
This landscape would have been like a building site full of hundreds of labourers working on site, and we wanted to create the atmosphere, potentially, of that.
The last piece then was coming back to do Strange Magic. So that was about bringing the whole thing together into one poetic action.
As gentle mists come rolling in among the reed and briar, the heron spreads her silver wings above the autumn fire.
When we invite people to journey through the landscape with us, we hope that they come away with a somewhat transformed feeling about where they've been, and that feeling and that memory will subsequently form the narrative of that landscape.
Certainly when we're by the lake, the magic of it really happens. And the fact that they were all dressed in the smocks and frocks, I think gave several of us who were on the sewing team a real sense of pride being part of the project.
And as we walked back, it was quite a solemn time. It was almost, ethereal really, as we walked snake through the house, because it brought the whole project really together.
There were some key moments which actually will stay with me for a long time, where this beautiful landscape that we're standing in was completely illuminated by fire and sound.
Oh,
think just judging from the response of visitors and the feedback we've had, absolutely this is going to influence our programming going forward, and we'd certainly look to have more Trust New Art projects in the future.
There are two things, I suppose. How artificial this landscape is and how ingenious that is, and at the same time celebrating the fact that it took an awful lot of people, 2-3 generations of families who must have been working on this to make it happen. You forget about that. You know about the owners, you know about Capability Brown. We know none of the names of those people.